Mega Man, Monster Hunter, Phoenix Wright, Resident Evil, Street Fighter. These names have one thing in common, and they are made by the Japanese gaming company known as Capcom. Known for their high-quality games, banger remakes, and sometimes infamous trash fires, we decided to end the season with neither one of those games. But one of their lesser-known oddballs, Ghosts and Goblins. However, we're not talking about the Adventures of Arthur going through the game twice just to get an ending with bad grammar, or its spin-off where you play as a gargoyle. Nah, what we're talking about is lesser and chat-like 3D cousin, Maximo. A tale of a platforming badass who's friends with the Grim Reaper had a crazy development. It would have been a trilogy, but sadly it never was. Then again, the original plans for this game was a much more gothic. In today's season finale, it's a two-part double feature, focusing on the rise of the first game and then the cancelled conclusion of one of Capcom's most overlooked games. So ladies, gents, trans, and ghosts and goblins, welcome to Lost Legends. Maximo Part 1, The Rise. Before we get to the main meat, a lot of the info I'm talking about is from this here book, Video Games You Will Never Play by the Lost Video Game Archive Unseen 64. This book, as the title states, contains a bunch of cancelled games to talk about, some with exclusive pictures, new info, and some interviews. This also contains a very good source of Maximo info you may not heard of. I am not sponsored or have any affiliation by them, but I just want to point it out for you. This book is a great read. I recommend getting yourself a copy. Expect this book to crop up in later Lost Legends episodes. Now let's get a move on. Capcom had many subsidiaries under their blue and yellow umbrella. Let me tell you a little something about their number of production studios division. This structure was one of Capcom's development divisions, like Division 1 and 2 who focus on making bangers like Mega Man, Ace Attorney, Resident Evil, the works. Those are the internal developers. The production studios division are developed externally, and let me give you the brief on each and every one of them. Studio 1 developed some bangers like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Devil May Cry's 2 and 3. Studio 2 did some Mega Man Battle Network games. Studio 3 did a couple Resident Evil spin-offs. Studio 4 did Steel Battalion. Studio 5 is Capcom's mobile division, who also made a Darkstalkers PSP game. Studio 6 made Chaos Legion, and Studio 7? Nothing, because I think the company never got off the floor. Our main cast of the episode is the one that skips over 7, Capcom Production Studio 8. But for the sake of the two videos, I'm referring them as Studio 8. A short-lived Capcom subsidiary who resides in California, who not only develop our game in question, but also two Final Fight games that people already forgot about. Until I just mentioned it right now. The concept for the game was created by the mind of Studio 8's head honcho, David Siller. The Tale of Maximo wasn't going to be a Maximo game at all. It was going to be an isometric game known as Ghosts and Goblins 3D. That didn't go through its pre-production stage, and it only remains as a couple concept art pieces. A second attempt was moved on to the Nintendo 64 known as Ghosts and Goblins 64. That too didn't last long, as I'm guessing hardware limitations of the N64 will be impossible for its scale. No, I don't think it's on the ill-fated 64DD either. There was a third attempt and it featured Maximo, an adults-only rated Capcom title for the PS2. Normally you can't sell AO-rated games at your local Walmart and electronics boutique, so yeah. Anyways, in an interview with William Anderson from the Unseen 64 book, He stated that Capcom was seriously considering doing a hard R rated for violence and sex dark Maximo medieval fantasy game. Luckily, they didn't get their wish, and it was only a pitch. You could read through the rough draft of the early script in the description. So why the rejection? It was intended to be dark and gritty with some realistic graphics at the start, but Capcom Japan, unlike his American counterpart, are stubborn fossils and said that they wanted the realistic graphics to come out of their country. To make this sting even further, a game with a similar concept was already accepted. It was originally a Resident Evil sequel that was turned into Devil May Cry. This isn't the only time Capcom Japan would screw their overseas developers over with wild decisions. Angel Studio was also victim to this when they tried to make their spiritual Gunsmoke successor, which ended up being Red Dead Revolver. Made a video on that long ago. Now back to the drawing board. They come over their second Maximo pitch, and this was accepted, but it's not as violence or sex or gritty graphics, but a more cartoony approach, thanks to the artwork of Susumu Matsushita. His artwork may look familiar, but Maximo wasn't the first time he was involved to do the artwork. Hell, it's not even the first Lost Legends episode featuring his artworks. Most of the previous works involved making the box art and press materials, but Maximo was one of the few gigs where he did the character designs. So development went on full swing without a hitch after the previous 3 attempts. It made its appearance in E3 2001 and managed to make its release by December on the same year. The rest of the world got its release in the following 2 to 3 months, and for those who are wondering, what would a 3D Ghosts and Goblins look like? To put things into context, Maximo is a 3D hack-and-slash platformer for the PS2. You play as the titular knight himself who got killed in the first cutscene by the traitor known as Achille. You meet the Reaper named Grim. He has a problem of his own when Achille built a mega drill that digs straight to the underworld, summoning the undead to command at his will. After you made a mutual deal, you have to make your eventual journey through a graveyard, Louisiana, the magnetic north, and the depths of Heck to rescue the 4 sorceresses. And then you reach to your castle, defeat Achille and his undead army, and rescue Princess Sophia. The enemies you'll fight the most are Achilles' undead army, mostly skeletons and zombies. Besides them, you also face the bastard crows, wizards, yetis, gators, demons, and even ghosts. Not so much about goblins. There's also treasure chests scattered all over the levels, and even some would reveal after jumping around in proximity. Some chests and gates are locked behind an iron key, and yes, you can carry a load of these at a time. Oh, and some chests are monsters too, so be careful about that. There's also these magic vendors which you can spend a pretty penny for either health, armor, shield upgrades, random items, and notably a pair of briefs. And foot cheese. After beating the first level of each world, you go to this hub area in which you can complete the following levels in any order. Beating all of them grants access to the centerpiece, leading to that world's boss, and one of the sorceress sisters. There are only 2 methods of saving: the pool in the hub areas, or saving the sisters. However, for the save pool, you have to dish out 100 coins to either save or travel to the previous worlds to do some unfinished business. It gets tough, and you'll need power-ups. There's plenty, like the ability to throw your shield like a boomerang, turn that into a magnet that attracts collectibles, make your sword longer, perform new attacks, have an extra health bar, etc. Another is temporary sword enchantments to kill enemies faster, like this fire sword, light sword, ice sword, though that one sucked, and my personal favorite, Armageddon, where each swipe emits thunder. These can be more useful with certain power-ups, so you can shoot fireballs or create a storm of destruction. If you're so much of a Chad that you have max armor, collecting another one makes you temporarily invincible. If you have the Mask of Sorrow, then everything dies by you touching it. Your shield also has its own health bar, and yes, you can find upgrades for it. Don't rely on this for too long or else you'll lose your only means of defense in collecting distant treasures. Although the premise is simple and mechanics are quite good, the game itself is brutal. So imagine this for a sec. You're on your way to finish the last set of levels, haven't died a single death so far. There's a few moments that you almost bit the dust, and if you look at all these power-ups, dying would lose all of them. Except the first 7 items. Or 3 because 4 of them are Sorcerer's Kisses that unlocks the game's art gallery. Not only that, it has a live system. So if you lose all of them, you'll be greeted with Grim to pay up those death coins, which are collected every 50 Navi looking things called spirits, in which you can collect them by, destroying certain things that are glowing, like tombstones, snowmen, random torches, etc. Oh, and to make this worse, those death coins, the cost of reviving yourself will increase if you make constant visits. So in other words, get good. Speaking of unlockables, apart from the art gallery, there's also ones you can watch the cutscenes, and one bonus level which is just Grave Danger but in reverse. The stuff is reorganized, and it's way more brutal. That's only if you manage to be a little completionist yourself, and that means you have to 100% the entire game. As in, find all the treasures, dig up chests, kill all enemies, etc. I didn't do this, so what you're looking at is someone else's. So despite its harsh difficulty, it's still a fun game to play, underrated even. Hell, even emulated, it's not that bad because of the save states. So, bottom line, Maximo's a very decent and challenging game, but I wouldn't call this game a hack and slash per se. I mean, it's very little in hacking and slashing, but a lot more platforming. Yeah, that's it. So anyways, let's talk about some of the beta builds. We have a few beta builds to talk about. No, we don't have the ones before the PS2 version was made. It's unknown that such a build exists on the Nintendo 64, but I contacted one of the concept artists who worked on the game and said that no N64 prototype was ever made. Then again, that claim will be contested since this is a 20-year-old game after all. For the PS2, we got 2 beta builds and the official demo. The earliest being a preview build from July 9th, and another from September 11th. Oof. The official demo is likely released after the final Japanese release date of late December 2001, with some changes for the purpose of showing off its features. So let's get to it. Let's start with the July build, which claims to be 10% complete. The first thing off the bat is the early title screens. In the final, it shows the static Capcom logo and the Capcom Digital Studios title with that ominous sound. The beta has an FMV. The main menu screen had the Maximo logo displayed on top, while the menu titles are in Comic Sans. Starting the level lacks the cutscene, and sends straight to the action without the level title. Immediately, it has some differences, like the very HUD being a standout thing. Apart from the red health bar, there's 5 little holes surrounding the sword crystal. That probably indicates your temporary sword upgrades and how much you got left. For sound design, it's unfinished. Certain sounds are missing, some placeholder voice acting, different or incorrect sounds are playing, like picking up anything besides coins, play the sound you pick up the coins. And the music doesn't loop properly. One notable instance is how power-ups are given. In the final, it's a guarantee that you'll get the second strike, finishing blow, and the shield throw power-ups first. But in this version, you'll likely see the extended shockwave power-up and fire enchantment. Speaking of enchantments, the fire sword is treated like a power-up, and picking up the Doom Strike and performing it at once will waste it. One thing that's different is how you obtain the death coins. In the final, you have to collect 50 spirits, and it works just the same here, albeit clunky. But you could also find them lying around in levels, or in these magic vending machines. Surprisingly, enemies could also drop shields, which in the final game won't or rarely happen. Another thing being different are how the levels end. At the end of each level you have to fight a small wave of enemies so this force field breaks off. In the earlier version, it doesn't have that. Also, there's no camera panning at some part of the level. Level 2, which is the hub area, but it shouldn't play music here apart from the ambience. Anyways, the place with the skull holds a death coin instead of armor, and the save pool is there, but it's non-functional. The other levels are there, with some minor differences in terms of item and enemy placement. However, finishing the levels unlocks the boss room, but the cutscenes of the bridge and getting in the room is unfinished. For regular enemies, I don't see much differences apart from them zombies having a different voice. The ghosts don't have this blue glow, the wizard's projectiles don't glow either, and the ravens could also take away your power-ups. One design that's completely different are these statues of Achilles, which aren't these massive stone Achilles heads, but literal headstones. Another are the monster portals, which don't look like this misshapen floor over the skull, but a triangular look. Now for the boss. Ghastly Gus was planned to be in the early pitch versions of Maximo as this thing, but was changed to look like that lumpy guy from Ocarina of Time. It is very incomplete as his attacks lack any sound effects, and you can cheese him by giving him the XX triangle special where the shockwaves hit his feet, and then you can do it again in a whack for insurance. Don't try to throw your shield at his feet, because that instantly destroys it. Repeat that for a few minutes and killing him shows his tombstone rising from the ground. If he kills you, there's a cute little cutscene where your tombstone rises from the ground. After defeating him, the game starts to have a seizure and returns back to the title screen. Yeah, there's no other worlds implemented, hence 10% complete. Next is the September build. Before you ask, this build date is just a coincidence. So let's stay on topic. 9/11 is bad.
I agree with that!
This build almost resembled the final release, but there's some differences to consider. One is the title screens, which still have the FMV Capcom title, then the different copyright stuff, and selecting things you have to press square. The intro FMV had unfinished audio, as it's awfully quiet. The first level, we have the final version of the text. In this build, I managed to get the light sword quite early in the first level of all places. Normally you're supposed to get this one in the second world, but here we are. It doesn't have that cute little icon though, like in the last build. Some of the enemies are finalized like Ghost and Achilles statues, but the end of level wave isn't made yet. The hub world is mostly finalized. The save pool is usable, but the memory card is much different. For my curiosity, I checked the save icon and all I got is this weird looking starfish thing that walks. This save would likely corrupt itself, so keep an eye on that. I'm skimming through the following levels because there's very little to talk about. The boss fight against Ghastly Gus isn't too bad, but he still breaks their shield once you toss it at him. Then instead of his tombstone, Raven from Teen Titans fades to existence. By the way, there's no sound, but there's an option to grant an extra life in place of saving your game. The FMV after rescuing the sorceress does play, but again it's too quiet. The second world, the swamps, I don't see any major differences. The only notable thing is the sound where you obtain the Mask of Sorrow is different. The gators don't show bubbles, and the plant monsters lack any sound apart from their deaths. The voodoo doctor I made quick work also lacked most of their sounds, and once you defeat him and free the Amazon, it sends you back to the title screen. You can replay the cutscenes or you can load your previous save, but beyond that there's nothing else. I mean, it's an unfinished build after all. These could be found in a few sources, either in English or Japanese. One can be found in the official US PlayStation Magazine issue 55, which features Maximo on the game disc. Booting up the game shows you an early title? It's possible. Some game demos, let alone demo discs, use a different logo compared to the final, or even the demo itself. Anyways, this only has the first level and no intro FMV. The main difference here is that you'll see power-ups in the open, notably that shield. Gameplay is pretty much the same like the final version, with a slightly rearranged level for this demo. There's nothing much to say about this apart from the splash screen saying coming soon. Well, by soon I meant the game's already available when the magazine released. Now let's head on to the pre-release stuff. There isn't much info about Maximo's early stages of development. Sure, we got some concept arts, but nothing else apart from what I'm talking about in this chapter. The first one we got is an early pitch prologue of the AO rated Maximo from December 1998, which had potential of being its own game. The main antagonist is not Achille, but the demoness Lilith, sending her hordes of hell upon the world. And then there's this guy who fought a dragon from day to night, slain the beast, and forged 3 magic swords from it. Lilith corrupts the swords, which makes the wielder more sus and malevolent. Then Maximo came to the scene after the prologue segment, and was confronted by the corrupted king, jumped out of the castle, head to its home, to find his family turned into horrible nightmarish monsters, in which he had no choice to end their misery and swore vengeance against the former king. That's what the setup is like, and the journey is left in speculation as nothing else is written after that. There was also some early concept art for some Maximo characters, but the best place I know was from a discontinued art book by Susumu Matsushita, that does contain more than just Maximo concepts. Unfortunately, I don't have his art book during the time of writing, but I'm willing to bet I haven't missed much apart from the blood from Maximo's sword. I don't want to get too reckless on my spending habits. Beyond that, there's also some game trailers. There's not much, but this early game trailer shows gameplay from an earlier build, but does show levels beyond the boneyard. Scanning through the footage, I realized they used 3 or more builds to make this trailer. The early levels used the July build, and there's a couple shots showing an earlier HUD, which features a red sword crystal and early soul icon. The commercials don't have anything noteworthy either, but remember when these ads had a lot more effort put into them? And some are quite funny? Those were the times.
Your husband is doing better, but he's still having the dreams.
Be every undead soldier's nightmare. Be Maximo.
Looks like someone needs their bedpan changed.
Okay, late edition. When I was working on the second chapter trying to gather a screenshot of the Sorcerer's Kisses, I stumbled upon 2 things. A very early Maximo logo plus character designs dated from 1999, and some old storyboards from Scott Rogers' Blogspot, who I discovered he had cancer. Pardon my French, but fuck cancer. There's a GoFundMe on his blog if you want to be more charitable than the completionist. Rogers in a 2021 blog post unveiled some behind-the-scenes work related to the cutscenes. The first post related is an alternate opening cutscene which is longer and explains some of that juicy lore, while Maximo dies an agonizing death. The second one is related to Ghastly Gus, with some alternate character designs and arena floors which collapsed as the fight went on. There's also the one where you witness Stephanie's death and prepare to enter the underworld. And then the next one, Maximo confronts Achille. The next one is interesting. A deleted scene where Maximo defeated Achille and escapes the drill chamber on the brink of collapse as the castle sinks down to the underworld. This is a smoother transition to the next scene where Maximo rescues Sophia, who is actually a horrible demonic creature, which becomes the final boss fight in the dark. The ending is relatively the same, but it starts with the death of the Demon Queen. Then it plays as normal, with the big difference being that the demon creature is Achilles' creation, and not some demon corrupting him. Yeah, that's it for this chapter, but go check Scott's blogspot for some fascinating reads. There's some good stuff in there. As of the miscellaneous stuff and cut content, well, it's not enough to garner its own chapter. Sorry. Development text isn't interesting unless it's funny rants and vulgar dialogue like that Tetris game from the N64. Pity. But is this how I end the first part of this finale? Just nothing burgers? Well, it turns out I was wrong. There is some unused content, but not within the game. But its official soundtrack, exclusively in Japan. Okay, maybe not unused, but we get to listen to the cutscene music without the voices. Speaking of voices, there's a track full of voice lines, but in Japanese only.
Oh. いか？この次は高いよ。ふん。ふんふんふん。
逃げろ。逃げるがいい。とどめだ、マキシモ。どうだ、マキシモ。ははは。ははは。
There's a disc 2 of the OST, but that one is the entire Ghouls and Ghosts arcade soundtrack. You know, as a bonus. Well, the Maximo train is just getting started, so tune into part 2 where we cover briefly on the sequel, and what happened to the ill-fated third entry. Yeah, sorry if this feels abrupt, I just don't have a better way to end this video. Also, 9/11's still bad.